50 years ago, it wasn't really a beautiful day in Washington Square West, a neighborhood in Center City, Philadelphia in the early 1900s. People who were queer could be arrested, fired from their jobs, or given a mental illness label. But fast forward to 2018, it's now called the Gayborhood, a place where peace marches happen annually and queer people live their lives freely. Many people were influenced by reactions from the government, newspapers, and the medical field's classification of queer as a mental illness. The government reacted harshly to the queer rights movement by arresting queer people, making it so that queer people couldn't be openly queer in public spaces, and sending detectives to find queer people. One example is John Sorensen talking to children about the dangers of being queer. Notice how he doesn't say why being queer is dangerous. You'll just be arrested for it.
There may be some in this auditorium. There may be some here today that will be homosexual in the future. There are a lot of kids here. There may be some girls that'll turn lesbian. We don't know. But it's serious. Don't kid yourselves about it. They can be anywhere. They can be judges, lawyers. We ought to know we've arrested all of them. And if we catch you involved with a homosexual, your parents are going to know about it first. And you will be caught. Don't think you won't be caught. Because this is one thing you cannot get away with. This is one thing that if you don't get caught by us, you'll be caught by yourself. And the rest of your life will be a living hell.
We interviewed Bob Skiba, who is an archivist at the William White LGBT Center. He also maintains the Philadelphia Gayborhood history blog.
If you grew up on the outskirts of Philadelphia or in the suburbs, and you were a gay man or a lesbian or a trans person, and you wanted to lead a life by yourself, you had to come into Center City. There were apartment buildings, so 2 or 3 gay men could come in, rent an apartment in Center City, be close to their work. They'd also be close to entertainment, to theaters and bars. By the 1940s, the corridor along Spruce Street was so kind of infamous that the code word for gay men living in Center City, like your old Aunt Gertie would say, is she normal or is she one of those Spruce Street boys? So Spruce Street boy became the code word for gay men living in Center City. By the 1950s and 60s, there were gay bars along that part where we call the Gayborhood today, both on both sides of Broad Street and along 13th Street. Gets its name, Gayborhood, about 1991 during a gay festival. Someone from WXPN Radio was broadcasting and said, "It's a beautiful day today in the Gayborhood," and the name stuck. And that was, of course, based on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and this guy said Gayborhood, and it stuck.
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a neighborly day in this beauty wood, a neighborly day for a beauty. Would you be mine? Could you be mine?
There were a chain of coffee shops in Philadelphia called Dewey's. There was one on 13th Street in the Gayborhood, which many LGBT people would hang out at.
Well, there was another one on 17th Street, right on the corner of Chancellor. In the spring of 1965, late April 1965, people started hanging out there, and the management said, "We don't want this to turn into a gay hangout." So they refused to serve anybody who looked different. A local man named Clark Pollock, who had a group called the Janus Society, which was an activist group, found out about it. He went down with lawyers, and they handed out leaflets. And they had a sit-in, very much based on African American sit-ins that were happening. They called the police. The police came and said to the management, "Are these people doing any harm?" They said no. They said, "Are you going to serve them?" They said no. And the police said, "There's nothing we can do then." So they left. After a few days, the management reversed their position and said, "We'll accept anyone." So it was the first successful, peaceful sit-in for gay rights in the country.
Throughout the mid-20th century, queer rights activists have been trying to get the rights they deserve. Society believed that queer people were mentally ill and sick. They didn't let them into public places like Dewey's and the Stonewall Inn. The government responded by harassing them and using violence to make them disperse from their festivities at night. They had professionals speak to stop kids from becoming queer, saying that they'll get arrested if they do, but never saying why. But the activists responded and stood up for the rights that they technically always should have had, but never got them for quite a while. Protests were constantly happening, and the activists used several techniques that the civil rights movement used, including sit-ins and peaceful protests. But they also had riots that were not as peaceful. After a long battle against society, the queer rights activists finally succeeded and got their freedom. But have they gotten all the rights they deserve? Have a good day.